Thank you. The next proclamation I have is going to be presented to us this evening by Sabrina Berry for Juneteenth.
Whereas Juneteenth commemorate each year on June 19th marks the day in 1865 when Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and issued General Order Number 3, informing the last remaining enslaved African Americans in the Confederacy that they were free more than 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. And whereas this historic day represents the effective end of chattel slavery in the United States and symbolized the triumph of freedom, justice, and the American ideal that all men are created equal. And whereas the emancipation of millions of African Americans were achieved through the courage and sacrifice of Union soldiers, black and white, who fought to preserve the Union and end the institution of slavery, along with the unyielding determination of abolitionists, Underground Railroad conductors, and formerly enslaved leaders such as Frederick Douglass. And whereas it was President Abraham Lincoln who issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, and who championed the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which permanently abolished slavery throughout the United States. And whereas the work of abolish was further carried forward through the efforts of legislators in Congress and state legislators who passed the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and laid the foundation for the 14th and 15th Amendments, securing citizenship, equal protection, and voting rights for African Americans, a legislative legacy rooted in the conviction that the promise of American freedom must extend to all people. And whereas Frederick Douglass, a towering figure in the fight for freedom, worked tirelessly alongside civic and political leaders to advance the cause of liberty and full citizenships for African Americans, leaving a legacy that continues to call this nation to its highest ideals. And whereas the Frederick Douglass Foundation of North Carolina and community partners are hosting a statewide celebration on Juneteenth on June 20th, 2026 in Raleigh, North Carolina, to commemorate the holiday with music, drama, multimedia presentations, and statements from elected officials. And whereas Sabrina Berry, serving as Western Regional Coordinator for the Frederick Douglass Foundation of North Carolina, has helped organize and promote Juneteenth observance and civic engagement throughout the western region of the state. Now therefore, the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim June 19th as Juneteenth throughout Cabarrus County and declare that Juneteenth is recognized as a day of profound historical significance, the fulfillment of a promise written in law by those who believed that freedom was not a privilege but a birthright. We honor the memory of President Abraham Lincoln and all the soldiers, abolitionists, legislators, and everyday citizens of every race who fought, sacrificed, and died so that millions might be free. We celebrate the extraordinary legacy of Frederick Douglass and other Black leaders whose voices, courage, and perseverance helped bend the arc of American history towards justice. Today, Cabarrus County and the Frederick Douglass Foundation rejects all modern forms of human trafficking, exploitation, and affirms that every resident in this county deserves the full and equal pursuit of happiness under the law. Approved this 15th day of June, 2026.
Thank you for reading that, Sabrina.
And let's move forward. Last thing I do want to say, it warms my heart, Mr. Pittman, that you would vote against our Juneteenth resolution. Confederacy lost once, and every time you vote against it, it loses again. Thank you.
Hello, y'all. My name is Robert Matton from Concord, and I'd just like to talk a little bit about accountability and transparency. as we all have been speaking about this, accountability. What does that mean? One thing that accountability means is facts, that we go by facts. We do not deny facts. If something is well documented, if it's history, if it's American history, we don't publicly, as a public elected official, deny the facts and come off with some other version. And so when you have something like a no vote against June 19th, that is denying American history blatantly. And you smirk all you want. Deny American history doesn't do you any good. It's fact. It's fact. It is fact. And it's just disgusting that we have people in this day and age representing us who cannot accept facts and cannot be honest about reality. Thank you.
And in closing, I'd also co-sign that what's the issue you have with Juneteenth? Make that plain too, and say it in the streets, to the press, and let's be real about what's going on with our history and the division in this country, because that doesn't help. Thanks.
Pittman.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, I want to address this thing about Juneteenth. I don't support it because it is based on a lie. People were not set free by the Emancipation Proclamation. And that general or whoever he was that told people in Texas that they had been set free on June 19th, maybe he had just set them free, but it wasn't because of the Emancipation Proclamation. It only applied to Southern Confederate states and territories. It did not apply to the slaves in Union states. That's why General Grant, who could have set his wife's slaves free at any time, refused to do so until the 13th Amendment was passed in December. It was passed in June, but was finally ratified and became law in December, I believe it was December 18th of 1865, 8 months after the war was over and Lincoln was dead. If you want to celebrate the slaves being set free, I want to celebrate with you. But get the right date, December 18th, 1865 is when that actually happened. Okay? Now, my wife and I went to the state GOP convention this weekend. And she's on the executive committee. They had their meeting yesterday. And so she was in the meeting, and I was standing in the back because I'm not on that executive committee. And this very nice black gentleman came up to me to talk to me and thank me for things I had said in the convention and to solicit my support for him to replace Secretary Troxler as Secretary of Labor. And after we talked, I'm glad to say I will support him. But when this stuff came up about Juneteenth, while he and I were back there quietly talking, I told him about my objections to it and why I objected and how it ought to be in December, not Juneteenth. And he agreed with me because he's a reasonable man. He understood the truth that I was telling him. Okay, now, moving on to the transparency statement. I wanted to pass that. There's a lot of good in that statement that I agree strongly with. There were a couple of things to which I objected, and so I offered to the board members an amended version to correct those things, and it was my understanding we were going to consider that amended version and do it tonight. I found out today we're not going to. I wish I could have gotten that amended version before us because I would have voted for that. As it was written with the things I had to object to, I'm going to have to vote no. But one of the things that I said yesterday, or not yesterday, but Saturday during the state convention that got a huge response, and that's one of the things this gentleman came up to me to talk about, was you keep hearing all this garbage about elected officials being leaders. And I told the convention, I'm sick and tired of hearing people call elected officials leaders. We are supposed to be public servants. That's all I've ever tried to be as an elected official. I didn't want this job. Everybody knows that. But so many people insisted on it that I ran. And I got the job, and I'm trying to do it the best I can. But I don't want to support anything based on a lie. And I am willing to hear people. But I'd appreciate it if you didn't attack somebody you don't really know about stuff about which you know nothing. You don't know me, you people who want to attack me, or any of the rest of us up here. You may know some of them, I don't know if you do or not. But true history is important. Not what an elitist point of view forces to be taught in schools and ignores the real truth of what happened.
Then do you admit this?
And my son, hey, it is not your turn, sir. My son graduated from Wingate University with a degree in history. And I've talked to him about some of these things, and from his studies, he confirms to me exactly what I've learned by going beyond textbooks and looking at other sources. A lot of these things I learned by doing that when I was a kid. And it makes me sick what passes for history that is falsehood. And I will not just sit by and take it. I guess I've said enough.
Yeah.
You've said enough, boy.
Boy. What do you mean, boy?
I mean, you act immature.
Commissioner
sir.
Wortman?
I don't have any real general comments.
Order.
I don't have any